I've been humbled again and again. I've been like totally flat out in these years of being with my partner, partially because we both entered in consciously and we're willing to turn towards all of the hard places inside ourselves. We had done decades of work before on our own and in other partnerships, and we're both on the path. We're committed. We're like, hey, this is a safe container. And so if I can't open in this safe container, if I can't show up here, then that's on me. That's me turning away from myself, not you. So all the annoying things he's doing are about me. So much rose for me when I started to open so much of my past and my childhood that I had to sift through, that was not his responsibility to hold, that I had to learn, like, not to project onto him, right? And then we had dovetailing patterns that like totally were like, oh my God, when I do this, we go into a rupture and we're gonna have to learn how to meet this. Or we could turn towards another partner who doesn't activate any of our patterns. Good luck finding someone out there who doesn't activate any of your patterns. But we were aware that the type of heat and friction we were creating when we first got together, that we were going to have to do a lot of practice to stay with it. And that was humbling. I mean, there were crossroads where we're like, do we still want to stay in this?
How can you spot a good partner in the first interactions?
So the first thing you do is...
I'm Layla Martin. I'm your host of This Tantric Life. This podcast is for you to learn about and be able to use the incredibly powerful system of Tantra in your life. I have been teaching and studying classical and neo-Tantra for over 20 years. And when you apply that to sex, love, and relationships, as I love to do, you end up having conscious relationships, the deepest, most epic and magical sex, and the kind of intimacy that you get to be grateful for on your deathbed.
Hi, and welcome to This Tantric Life. I'm Layla Martin. I can't wait to share today's guest with you, Alexandra Roxo, who is an artist and best-selling author of the exceptionally well-titled book, Fuck Like a Goddess. She's been featured on 2 seasons of Netflix Too Hot to Handle. Her work has also been featured in the New York Times, Harper's Bazaar, Vogue, and many other publications. Welcome, Alexandra. So I remember the first time I saw your book title, How to Fuck Like a Goddess, and I was like, what an amazing book title. So how does one fuck like a goddess? And then I'd love a few tools that we can use to fuck more like goddesses.
Yeah. So I'm an artist and a poet at heart. And when I picked that title, I was like, look, obviously we live in a very literal society, right? Like there's not always a lot of nuance, but the subheader of the book is the explanation of the steps to fucking like a goddess in all realms, in the metaphorical and in the literal. I am a metaphor, like poetic person. So I just like to think about things like fucking like a goddess more than just like a heart pounding. It's like, but I get that most people when they see the word fuck are like literal sex.
Yeah.
There's so much to the word fuck that is beyond that. I get into the etymology of it in the first chapter of the book. But in the book, I say that the way you learn to fuck like a goddess is first you heal yourself, then you reclaim your voice, and then you stand in your power, essentially coming into wholeness. And so any parts or pieces of you that along your journey of being human have been split off, have felt traumatized, hurt, abused, neglected, any of that, that healing is what then gets you into this beautiful aligned state where from that, fucking like a goddess is making love to your life and someone that you love, a beloved, yes, that person too, a human too, but it's like bigger than that. It's like fucking like a goddess is a deity who is love, is life, is creation, is destruction. And so fucking like a goddess is becoming that goddess. And obviously we'll get into some of Tantra later, but you know, as a tantric deity, it's like imagining a woman fucking like a goddess is like becoming one with everything. And so I get into some of that, more of the spiritual tones of that phrase in the book. Obviously, when someone picks it up off the shelf, they're going to probably think first, is this a sex manual? I was afraid that I would get some bad reviews because it's not a sex manual. And honestly, I think I'll leave that to you maybe. But honestly, I think people appreciated that, oh, this is more of a healing manual and a self-reclamation. And this is where I come into wholeness with my sexuality and my body, and where I look at healing the split between my spirituality and my sexuality.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm here to let you know that if you want to stay connected to my teachings and if you want to support this podcast, the best way to do it is to sign up for my email list. Email list sounds old school, and yet it is where I share my most intimate teachings, the path, process, heartbreak, and triumph of my life, and so much of the content that I make for you on a regular basis. So the way you get on the email list is by heading over to laylamartin.com, put your email address into any of the boxes. You can also sign up for cool practices like sex magic or energy orgasm, totally free. Heading on over to laylamartin.com, signing up with your email address. This supports the podcast. It supports this entire work and is the #1 way for you to receive the highest teachings of this path. I'd love to talk more about how you actually heal that split. I love talking about etymology, especially with the word fuck, because so many of our swear words in the English language are around being the receptive partner during fucking, right? So
Yeah.
whether it's a pussy or an asshole or a mouth, if you are the one being fucked, that is one of the highest shamey words, right? It's one of like the worst things to be called.
Yeah.
And the way that we use that term, like get fucked or fuck off or like all of this, is it's subtly hypnotizing us. I've seen this actually in the energy field in my own body and working with people to feel like the act of being fucked, right? Or fucking, but still being the receptive person is this low vibration or shamey or dirty thing.
Yeah.
So I see that most people, it's like to be fucked is like, oh, I'm sorry. Like there's like still this shame or pain body around it, the same way we had around the word pussy for a really long time
Yeah.
and are reclaiming very quickly. And then there's like this reaction to that. Well, instead of being shamed, instead of being less than, I'm going to like climb on top and perform and I'm going to own being this like badass bitch or whatever. But there's something so much deeper in fucking and being fucked that's like so artistic and profound. It's like one of the great spaces of life to be an artist in. So I love that you really made that connection because I feel like it's like one of the great stages of our life that has so much beauty and magic to it. And many of us, because we're so laden with that hypnotic brainwashing, we miss the opportunity to find out what it truly is to fuck like a goddess in the bedroom or out. I'm just gonna make it all about sex, even though I understand that the book is about so much more, just like Tantra.
Totally. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. So when you say like people being able to heal the split between sexuality and spirituality, can you talk about what that feels like in your body when that split is unhealed?
Yeah, of course.
And then what happens when you heal it?
Yeah. So the way that I think it can feel in many bodies, I've worked with a lot of women one-on-one and in groups for many years. And so I can appreciate that it feels different for different bodies and different people. But there's mostly a loss of connection with this deeper part of yourself that is the animal body, that is the primal. So because, I mean, I can go so deep into this, and I do in both of my books. It's like because of religion and conditioning and the wounds of repression and colonialization. And I mean, the fact that our country in the United States where I live was founded by Puritans, just who have this word, the pure, within their own self-identification. There's so much that's embedded in a lot of our DNA that says that our animal body is dirty, is bad, that our sexuality is bad, is shameful. I mean, this is stuff that nowadays I'm so glad most people have a little bit of self-awareness around. But that doesn't always equal to healing, being aware of something, right? So it's like, how do we come back in contact with like the beautiful treasure trove that is our animal body. And how do we see that as sacred? How do we see that as divine and not this kind of old paradigm of like up and out of our body is how we reach divinity, or we reach divinity by speaking to a priest at the church or a rabbi who is our intermediary between us and God. And to do so, we have to leave the animal body behind. We leave our sexuality at the door. We leave our wildness. We leave our, kind of guttural moans. We leave our poop, our pee, our blood, all of it, right? So that was kind of this old way. I mean, I say old because I exist in a conscious bubble of people that also have a lot of direction towards healing and self-reclamation, et cetera. But in a lot of places in the world, in this country, women are still terrified of their blood and their periods and their orgasms, and still feel like their bodies are really dirty or something to be ashamed of, right? So, it's such a huge collective and personal crucible to say, spirit can exist with body. And that's actually what it's meant to be. Like, how could I exist? How could I be created by God, Goddess, divine consciousness, love, if something was wrong? Like there's no mistake here, right? The fact that I desire to procreate or to love or to come or to cry or to scream, any of that, I put kind of all in the same category of the greater feminine. Any of that has been so maligned, like how could that be wrong? So, it's just like, I'm like, I lay in bed at night. I'm like, who do we have to blame for this? And I'm like, it must have been the Brits. It must have been the church. It must have been this, and I can't at this point, there's not one person to blame. There's not one entity to blame. Does it matter?
Wouldn't it be nice if there was just like one priest you were like, that fucking Paul?
There was like the Council of Nicaea, and there were these places where a bunch of men came together and said, hey, let's rewrite the Bible and let's do it in a way that we want to, so that we can manipulate the minds of people. And a lot of that kind of stuff still happens. And that has dictated our reality. It's created a reality that we participate in, not to get too meta about it.
Totally. Or like that Jesus was generally seemed to actually support women and have Mary Magdalene and be pro-female. And then like, I think it was like 30, 40 years after he died, it was actually who then became St. Paul, who wrote a bunch of misogynistic, anti-sex material.
Yeah.
And we forget that this can come from one person and not from God.
Totally. Exactly. And they're like, oh, sorry, somebody has the voice of God. I didn't understand that was like, he picked one person or whatever. That was all like Nietzsche said, God is dead, because the concept of that old God is dead. It is dying, right? Like, and people like us are here for like, ooh, what are we bringing forward about the new energy of the divine, which is not new, but how do we reclaim that as a humanity? Yeah. And so maybe it's in goddesses and gods, and maybe it's in nature, maybe it's in psychedelics. I mean, there are so many ways to experience the divine,
And shame is so soaked and like baked into, especially like our Western mentality.
Yeah.
It seems so self-evident that like, I should be ashamed if I fart really loud and it smells, or like, I should be ashamed if I get menstrual blood all over myself, or I should be ashamed. I remember a couple of different times where I felt like I had hit a peak of shamelessness. One was when I was working out at F45 and they had me like jumping up and down a bunch, and I was just peeing like basically all over my yoga pants. And I was like, I'm not going to stop. Like I wasn't peeing on anyone or on the floor. I was like literally just peeing on myself. And I was like, if women ran the world, just casually peeing when you have to jump up and down really hard would not be a shameful thing. Number one. And number two, I was like, I practiced the jade egg. Is my pelvic floor not strong enough? And I was just watching like all this stuff come up. And I was like, I'm just going to keep jumping until like I feel totally shameless about this. And I remember finishing the class and I just had pee all over my pants. I was like, okay, I think I proved my point. I'm going to head now. Or even like menstrual blood. Like now, if I bleed through my clothes, I'm like, oh, cool. Like I could change that, like, for hygienic purposes, but I don't feel this like burning shame.
Yeah.
And that's what I want everyone to experience with their own shit, with their urine, with like their body. Like even at my retreats, I'm like, sweat, like smell, it's
Yeah.
okay. Like we have such like, oh my, and you can be discerning. You can be like, oh, I want to look my best, or like, oh, if I'm going to have a nasty fart, I might try and leave the room or whatever, but without shame.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I just bled on myself. I might go change my dress, but I don't feel shame. And we've almost sewn and baked shame into our experience that we just take for granted. Like, of course I would feel ashamed of my animal experience.
Yeah.
Or women, being terrified to orgasm in case they pee on their partner, right? And that like being a huge underlying block of orgasm. Like, what would it feel like to just be like, if I were to pee during sex, I would love myself anyways. And I think that's the opposite of shame. It's not like, oh, I don't have discernment about what's appropriate or polite, in the best kind of way. Kind maybe is a better word than polite, but I love myself no matter what. And I don't feel ashamed of my human functionality. Like, it's crazy. We're all ashamed when we have all these things.
Yeah.
Like, everybody has an asshole. Like, why are we so like weird about it? You
Well,
know?
and I think that that's because it's been like everything's been repressed. There's so much hidden, swept under the rug. And like one of the ways that we heal this split is we feel again and we allow ourselves to have these very human experiences, like you said, of like reckoning with our physicality, reckoning with our emotionality, our sexuality. And for some people, like it's like really small moments, right? Like you sounds like have the capacity to go pretty big. I mean, like you're like amazing. You're peeing at the gym or
Totally.
on the bike or whatever it was, or on
the floor, jumping
on the floor.
Just jumping on the floor.
But for another woman, it may be like allowing herself to shed tears in front of her partner and just gifting her emotional expression in a moment to the person she loves instead of trying to like, I mean, I don't know. I do this move sometimes or just like, okay, or like, oh, it's fine, or any of that is denying my beautiful heart's expression of my emotional experience, which is an incredible part of this body and what it does, right? On the sexual, it would be the sensation. It would be like, oh, I'm yearning. I'm like hungry for you. I want to lick your face, or I want to like, suck on a part of you, and allowing those desires to come forward, big or small. And that healing with the animal body, or that kind of reclamation or coming home to. And then the next phase would be finding the magic and the divinity there. Like making friends with it again is a whole passage, right? Of like just being like, I'm allowed to experience rage in front of my partner, not aimed at them, spewed at them, not in an abusive way, but I'm allowed to have anger as a woman. Like, how often do I get angry in front of my partner? How often do I share grief? How often do I allow them to see what's happening on my insides? Or am I keeping everything tucked away? And for me, the gift of us as these gorgeous beings, I believe everyone has the capacity to, but I think women, because of our cyclical nature, we have a particular, if we have a hormonal system that's functioning in a particular way, we have a capacity to experience and express emotions in a way that can change the planet, in a way that can wake people up, in a way that can bless our partners and crack their hearts open in such a magical, ritualistic, deep, potent way. And so that emotional expression is a part of healing the split, even with the sexuality, because emotion is energy in motion. Sex is that too. We don't want to just have sex from the waist down. That's the pendulum swing. So it's like, oh, I can live life from like the head up and be totally disembodied and try to run away from my humanness, or I can just swing the pendulum and just live from the waist down. But what happens when I integrate all of it and the heart is at the center and I allow myself to be divine and spiritual and emotional and also sexual, and I don't have to like broadcast it all the time at a level 10, right? Like I can modulate with my life, and I can feel the moments where, yeah, maybe I do want to like just like pee on the floor next to, my partner, the car or whatever. I pee on the side of the road a lot and just like, smile at my man. Maybe I do want to just let my animal body be free sometimes, but then maybe there's moments where It's of something really subtle that drops me back into my integrated sense of beingness. And my heart and my pussy and my mind are all there and present. So
Mm.
to answer that question you asked about how do you start healing, you start feeling, you feel, what is my body saying right now? What is the sensation? And if you've had a particular level of trauma, even allowing yourself to feel hungry can be such a huge task,
Mm.
right? If you've been dissociating or you've been disembodied, you might not notice you're hungry or thirsty or wanting to make love. You might not notice that you're actually feeling really sad. So then those tiny things start to weave you back in to this beautiful body, this being that you are. The same with the sexuality. It's like, maybe it's not that you're like, okay, I got to have like G-spot orgasm, squirt, and then like do this and this and this. But maybe it's like, oh, I'm just starting to listen to the voice or to the gentle like pitter patter that's existing, this tiny pulse in my cervix.
Mm.
And like, where does that take me? You
Mm.
know? And so that first step is just, can I come back to feel?
Mm.
And then can I start to notice like what's mine, what's conditioning? And then from there, can I make choices? Ooh, okay, from this place of integration and wholeness, what do I want? What do I want to create? Where do I want to go? And that's where you can get really big with it, right? But I find that, we got to take the baby steps so that we can hold in our nervous systems and our bodies the reopening, if that's part of the journey, or the re eh, reinvigoration of sensation, right? So if part of the journey is to reinvigorate the sensations in the body, going slow enough so you don't blow yourself out, so you can like stretch in a really good way. Same with love. It's like, sometimes you do kind of have to blow it out of the park, but then it's like, well, I have to be creating a sustainable stretch in my loving, in my sexing, in my emotional expression so that this can become the new expanded me.
Mm.
I'm excited to take a moment and share with you about the VITA coaching certification. This program has been around for almost 10 years, and it is my highest offering. The sexual wellness industry is forecast to be a $125 billion industry by the year 2026. Why is this? Because people are more ready than ever to express their sexuality and build deeply connected, meaningful relationships, and also, obviously, to have the most outrageous orgasms and erotic experiences of their lives. But most people are never taught how to do any of this, how to have extraordinary relationships, how to have the sex they really crave. They're looking for qualified, confident professionals to teach them. And my VITA Sex, Love, and Relationship Coaching Certification is a powerful 1-year professional certification that's helped more than 2,000 coaches make their way to becoming incredibly successful and highly paid sex, love, and relationship professionals. But this program doesn't just train you in every aspect of the coaching process so that you can build a successful online business. VITA Coaching will also walk you through the personal transformation of a lifetime because the best coaches have done the work themselves. You'll discover so many transformative techniques like breathwork, meditation practices, self-pleasuring tools that you'll apply to your own life first, and then you'll use these same proven tools and techniques to get laser-focused results for your clients. We also hold an exclusive live embodiment retreat just for VITA coaching students and alumni every year. In this retreat, you'll experience 7 days of live teaching with the VITA teachers and I, and really refine your skills as a sex, love, and relationship coach. So if you feel called to claim your spot in this multi-billion-dollar industry and transform not only your own life, but the life of so many others around the world, you can join me inside the VITA coaching certification now at laylamartin.com/VITA coaching. That's laylamartin.com/VITA coaching, VITA. Tantra to me always has such an amazing teaching around so many of these pieces. I would say my relationship to emotion growing up was that they were burdensome. Like I was annoyed or ashamed that I was sad. I got really angry, but I shouldn't be angry. It was like this feeling of like, frustration, or like I might feel love, but I didn't feel enough love.
Mhm.
And in the Tantric tradition, emotions are signatures of goddess consciousness. So I think it's so helpful to actually feel
almost as if you had a statue, a holy statue of each emotional expression. And every single time you're having an emotion, it's like you're worshiping at the statue of that emotion inside of yourself. Like, this is the sadness within me. This is the anger within me. This is the grief within me. This is the fear within me. This is the disgust within me. And it's actually this holy rapture of having the experience of life within you, because that is what emotion is. It's a signature of consciousness and energy moving through your body, which is so amazing. And I find that one of the things, everything's so nuanced, that freezes us in time is actually not listening to our emotions. But then when we do finally start to feel them, it's like this tsunami from the past. And people don't usually like feeling tsunamis from the past. So even for me, I've had to really reckon with the fact that I had very young parts of me that have been so sad for so long, and like so much sadness. And I've never had a problem sobbing and crying. And like, I can cry daily, easily. My partner was like, what the fuck? You cry every day. And I was like, totally. Like, I absolutely have like cried most of my life since I opened those floodgates. And what I also found was that there was a very young part of me that still, it's like, as much as I cried and as much as I acknowledged that I was sad, I never just came inside of myself, fully sat down with her and was like, I get it. And like was intimate with her, but not merged with her. It's almost like I held her in the way that she always longed to be held. And finally, the huge, epic, ancient sadness was able to integrate. So the reason I bring this up is I think sometimes when we have ancient stuck emotion from long ago and we don't actually meet it, it can become this burdensome cycle, right? Like we're stuck in our anger, we're stuck in our sadness, we're stuck in our fear, right? So then it's like, we'll feel more emotion. Like, what the fuck? I'm already like drowning in my fear. I'm already drowning in my rage, right? And there's a difference between I'm feeling my emotion and I'm literally showing up with presence and love to attend to this part of me that never got the love and presence it deserved. Then I find the old storehouse moves and the fresh emotions feel more like art. But because very few of us have ever felt fresh emotion without the heavy burden of the past, it's hard sometimes to understand how that experience can feel amazing.
It sounds like what you're saying is kind of the difference between the emotions being conscious or unconscious and being able to make conscious choices versus these unconscious parts, younger parts leading us. And so like you're saying, you never get that reflection of the present moment because there's so much of the past that's infused there. And I think that's part of like the healing portion of what we're all doing, stopping intergenerational trauma, doing our own karmic cleanup so that in relationship, we can be responding to the present moment, to our lover, and it not be like we're like bringing it all in. I mean, for the first few years of my relationship, when my partner and I had a rupture, I was having total tsunami, floodgates opening because I'd never felt so safe in my life with a partner. And so those younger parts were all coming out of the woodwork and it was very, very intense. If I didn't have the personal practice and the mentors and the support, I would have been like running for the hills. Like, this relationship must be fucked because all of this material is rising. But I had the wherewithal to be like, okay, the material's all coming up here. This is interesting. And I could ask myself, like, does this person feel safe and trustable? Okay, great. I don't want them to hold all this for me. That's not fair. I can hold it myself, but they're willing to show up and be present with me while I'm holding it, right? And like, I've got mentors supporting me to see where I can't see myself. So that piece of like, yeah, depending what we've been through, when we begin to open the floodgates, there can be all kinds of things coming through. Is that a reason for us not to open to love or to sharing and feeling? No, right? But we do need a few tools before we do that. We need to have enough awareness and support so that depending on the material we're working with personally, it doesn't like blow us out, and cause deep depression or overwhelm to the extent that like you're like drowning, right? Because that is a potential reality for people. And like I see that happen in plant medicine spaces where people are just blowing themselves open really quickly. And then they have no idea what to do with all of that, right? And so like, I mean, I've done that. So I'm not saying like don't ever do that, but it can be dangerous in a way for you to just open the doors of the unconscious or to all your childhood parts and just say, come on out, everybody, at the same time. And then not know how to integrate that or to work with that. So it's like, yeah, that's where it's like an advanced practice. It's like, okay, how do I open my heart to this new person and know that there's some grief that I've never been loved like this and that's here? Or when they like, quote unquote, reject me, I'm actually feeling the rejection of my parents or whatever. How do I hold that? And then also let myself feel sad when I don't get what I want from my partner or when they say something that does hurt me. Differentiating these things is like, that's masterful. If you have the capacity moment to moment to go, oh, this feels, I mean, there's a silly adage in AA. I've never been in AA, but I've had people tell me this adage. It's like, if it's hysterical, it's historical. Have you heard that? So, I mean, that is an interesting indicator when you're in a relationship and like your partner does something and it's like, you go hysterical, like, ooh, okay, is this something from my past? Is this something that I need to spend a little bit more time with on my own in self-reflection and maybe some journaling, sitting with a mentor, a therapist, or a coach, or somebody that can help me kind of pick through this material? Is it a reason to not open to my heart again to this person? Potentially not, and, there are moments in my relationship where I go hysterical and my partner's like, seems like maybe this has something to do. And I'm just like, fuck you. Like that's the last thing you want to hear when you're upset. You're in the middle of a rupture with the person you love, but they have clear eyes to see in that moment, like, oh, wow, like her child wound is touched. Like there's something in her that's deeper. Now,
let's drink our sex magic because we're just
okay. Sorry.
No, that's fine. No,
okay.
Sorry.
Okay, drinking.
We just
are we cheersing or are we just going for
cheers
it?
our sex magic? Yeah. Okay. So this is from the Mood Supplement line, and this makes you feel tingly and amazing. And you take it 20 to 30 minutes before sex, or you can just take it on this Tantric Life podcast.
Yum. Thank you.
I'm going to be super real with you. I realized that the number one thing I want in my life is to feel good, right? An amazingly happy life is built on feeling good inside of the nervous system. Those are some of the most challenging feeling states to achieve when we're being bombarded by emails and screen time and overwhelming to-do lists and career and family pressures. And to reset the nervous system to be in its natural state of pleasure and play, that's right, nature actually wanted us to feel pleasurable, playful, sensual. It takes work. Research has shown it can take up to 2 hours to switch from go mode to deep relaxation, where you want to connect and feel good. If you're like me and you don't have 2 hours at the end of the day to meditate, to do yoga, then supplements and plants can actually help your nervous system to feel the ways that you crave. If you're interested in supporting your nervous system to feel the way that you most desire to feel, then go ahead and check out our Mood line to shop the entire Mood product line and unlock the pleasure you crave. I'm here to let you know about one of my favorite practices, Orgasmic Breathwork. So what I've done is I have made 2 different audio guides for people of all genders to train you in how to use breathwork to have more orgasmic sexual experiences. So this breathwork trains you to get out of your head, into your body, to be able to expand pleasure from being localized in your cock or your pussy or intersex genitals into the whole expanse of your body, and to be able to orgasm stronger, longer, and more powerfully. So Orgasmic Breathwork is one of the most powerful tools that I've ever come across, and you can learn it in a 10-minute guided audio. So you can get it totally for free by downloading it on my website. You can head over to laylamartin.com/orgasmic breathwork. That's laylamartin.com/orgasmic breathwork. You can also find the link down in the show notes. I'm so excited for you to try this practice. It's truly revolutionary and is one of the fastest ways to experience what I'm talking about throughout this podcast, which is a deeper, more potent, more transcendental sexual experience. I created this mastermind for couples because it is the experience that I wanted for me and my beloved. I was like, where can we learn Tantra together? Where can we become masterful at sacred sexuality together? And beyond that, where can we get the same education in how to communicate at a ninja level, and how to create emotional safety for one another, and on how to heal on the deepest levels whatever wounds keep us from staying in love over a lifetime? That's why I made this mastermind. It is going to be super fun because you get to go on the sexual adventure of a lifetime. I'm talking majestic European castles, beautiful nature experiences where you will be trained step by step in how to create erotic rituals and how to make love in an energetic and advanced spiritual way. It is, You'll also get 6 months of in-person classes on relational skills and tools, and also erotic mastery. Everything from how to touch each other in the most exquisitely sensual way, to how to have the most incredible energy orgasms together, to just how to say difficult things in a deeply loving way. You are going to get the advanced relationship training of a lifetime. If this is something you're interested in, you can go ahead and check it out at laylamartin.com/tantric mastermind.
So I'm curious, as you talk about your partner, you met your partner in 2020.
Yeah.
I'm curious, number one, what is it that you love about him? And number two, you mentioned it just a minute ago, but like, what was humbling after teaching about relationship and intimacy of finding your person? Like, what did you actually discover? You were like, wow, like I may have taught so much about it, but this thing, like,
Yeah.
wow.
Well, what I love about him is that he is so strong and steady and like steadfast in his presence. And that's something that when I was calling him in,
Mm.
I really wanted. I would practice as a woman, feeling in my body the qualities that I wanted to feel with a man.
Mm.
So this like, I wanted to feel this like hand on the lower back. That's just like, I've got you,
Yeah.
like this oak tree. And sometimes I would meditate and feel like my back against this oak tree where I could just melt into it. And I would practice that in meditation before bed as part of my own manifestation kind of technique of like letting my nervous system begin to feel that every day, just like being in response to that level of that energetic, of that steadfast strength and depth. I wanted to be with a deep man. You know, I was living in LA. There were a lot of sparkly, you know, burning man, yoga, like kind of sparkly guys. And I often found a lack of depth of like somebody who's so deeply rooted that maybe sparkling isn't their priority, or like kind of flitting about the town. And I really wanted that depth. And so I began to recognize in other men these qualities. And I was like, oh, I can feel that in this guy. Cool. Interesting. And so then I would, when I was with that particular friend, I would breathe it in and I would just feel the quality of his depth without creating polarity. Cause I was like, it was just with friends that I was practicing in this way. And then like say another friend would like open the car door for me and like walk me to my apartment, and I would feel that and I would go, oh, what does it feel like just to be in the deep receiving of that? And so there were these other men before I met my partner that were around, that were friends. Some of them were partners of other friends. Some were gay men. So it didn't matter, like, but none of them were potentials for romance for me, but they were teachers. And so they all taught me like how to receive these qualities that I was yearning for. Because I knew that if I kept attracting not that there were things in me that were either pushing it away or not able to receive it. And so I was in this conscious practice of receiving these qualities: depth, steadfast, awareness, presence. And Eli is like the most present man that I've ever met. And a lot of other people say that,
Mm.
you know, when it comes to like, being shiny on social media, he's like, not my thing, babe, But when it comes to deep, steadfast, present, like he's a person that changes nervous systems. Like people sit with him in tea ceremony or in meditation and people weep and he doesn't have to say anything to make them weep. He just carries this field that makes other people relax. And I love seeing that when other people are able to relax and receive his gift, obviously not just me receiving his gift. He leads men's retreats and he also obviously just shows up for people he loves in his life. But receiving him was a crucible. When I first met him, my system was like, whoa, that's a lot. I immediately was like totally contracted. Like I don't think I had ever received that much masculinity
Mm.
in a healthy way, but like he was so manly. And I was like, he's a man, he's not a boy.
Mm.
And that felt very new to me. He was such a man. And yeah, so it took me a moment to get my sea legs around that, just to be like, whoa, okay. Like I can interface with that much grounded masculine presence and and open into it.
I'm excited to tell you about my 6-week self-pleasure training, Obliss. This is the first course I ever made, and it has been going for over 10 years now. Most of us are never taught the tools required to create deeply rooted self-love, which not only leaves us feeling disconnected from our bodies and ourselves, but what a lot of people don't know is that a foundation of self-love is crucial to building the deepest connections and experiencing the most ecstatic pleasure with others as well. My 6-week sexual masterclass for women, Obliss, trains you to have the ultimate orgasm and fall deeply in love with yourself and your body. You'll heal your sexuality, address old wounds, face things like fear, guilt, shame, and shutdown, and be able to heal and integrate them, and discover how to access the deepest, most profound self-love. So whether you're just dipping your toes into the magic of Tantra, or you are a seasoned sacred sexuality practitioner, you can use Obliss to expand your pleasure capacity and to access the most exquisite self-love. You can join Obliss today. You can get started right away at laylamartin.com/Obliss. That's OBLISS, O like orgasm, and then bliss, laylamartin.com/Obliss. And what humbled you in your partnership?
Yeah. So I've been humbled again and again. I've been like totally like flat out in these years of being with my partner, partially because we both entered in consciously and we're willing to turn towards all of the hard places inside ourselves. We had done decades of work before on our own and in other partnerships, and we're both on the path. We're committed. And so I always tell like my students and clients, please don't compare yourself to us because we are a particular type of freak who have been doing this for 20 years in our own way, been practicing different types of spiritual practices and healing and medicine and all of that. So I'm like, don't look at us. And, we kind of like to go in the high level heat when it's necessary. And that was just something that were like, hey, this is a safe container, right? And so if I can't open in this safe container, if I can't show up here, then that's on me. That's me turning away from myself, not you. And that's a hard thing to even consider. It's like, wait a minute. So all the annoying things he's doing are about me? And it's both. It's not that black or white, but so much rose in my system, like I mentioned, so much rose for me when I started to open so much of my past and my childhood that I had to sift through, that was not his responsibility to hold, that I had to learn, like not to project onto him, right? And then we had dovetailing patterns that like totally were like, oh my God, when I do this and this, we go into a rupture and we're going to have to learn how to meet this. Or we could turn towards another partner who doesn't activate any of our patterns. And good luck finding someone out there who doesn't activate any of your patterns. But we were aware that the type of heat and friction we were creating when we first got together, that we were going to have to do a lot of practice to stay with it.
Mm.
And that was humbling. I mean, there were crossroads where we're like, do we still want to stay in this?
Mm.
I will say, I think that because we did a lot of work at the beginning, now we're in this really beautiful, blissful place. We've become parents recently, which is also super humbling of an experience. And we're like, fuck yeah, we worked our patterns really hard at the beginning.
Mm.
Now, when they come forward, we have so much grace and humor and art and play around them. And we move through ruptures with so much more ease. We still can have a rupture. I mean, recently we were like hiking in Italy and like, I just wanted to just throw in the towel. But I was aware, I'm like, oh, interesting. There's a part of me, it's not me. There's a part of me that wants to just throw in the towel.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, I was able to hold that in myself. This isn't my true essence, but something in me is deeply activated in this moment and it's mine,
Mm.
And we came back into repair, and so we've become very adept at that. I won't say masterful yet because God only knows. I don't want to attract to the gods are like, ha ha ha, you think you're masterful at that? But we have become adept at working with our patterns, recognizing them in ourselves, and then moving through with grace and ease. But it's not always graceful, I will say. There are times where I have slammed the door and stomped my feet in the kitchen. And now we integrate that kind of thing into our practice. And so it's like, he's like, yeah, bring it, give it to me. You want to stomp your feet? You want to be fucking pissed at me? Yeah, like I got it.
Mm.
Once I start blaming him and weaponizing, like that play is no longer available, right? Because defenses come in. So before I became a mom, I coached many women and sat with them, and I would tell them, look, I'm not a mom yet, so I'm going to try to give you my best support around this. And now I laugh. I wish I could send an email to all of those previous clients and be like, hey, I did my best to support you as a mom in partnership and in career and in life. But since becoming a mom, I have been so humbled. I mean, it's just like, whoa.
What is so hard about it?
Well, not hard.
Or what is
But
humbling
it's
about
like,
it?
it's so humbling that billions of women do this all the time. And they're incredible at it and they keep showing up to it.
Mm.
And it's like, it's so exhausting and it's so beautiful and it's like everything all at once.
Mm.
And so that's what's humbling. And you have to have a beginner's mind. It's like no one can tell you how to do it because your situation is your own. And so that's humbling. It's just like figuring it out together with your partner and being like, it's 2 a.m. and like, what are we doing? And how do we figure this moment out? And like, we're on the side of the road here, or we're like on this, airplane and we're walking our baby up and down the aisle. We're trying to figure this out. We're exhausted, like these moments. And then you just look at each other and you're like, I'm alive. Just like a spiritual experience or a medicine experience where you're like taken to all these different realms of your being.
Yeah.
Becoming a mom has been like that.
I loved Nisha's quote that motherhood is like an ayahuasca ceremony. You never actually really know what you're going to get. Like it's this full surrender.
Who's that?
Nisha Moodley.
Okay.
She's amazing. Yeah.
Okay.
What would you tell moms now that you didn't know to tell them then?
I think I would tell them just to be really easy on themselves. I was supporting moms. I'm like, okay, if you can get 5 minutes of practice in and just like even one song in the shower where you're feeling pleasure or where you're feeling an emotion that you really need to express, do it. Like while you're pooping, while you're like, you have 2 minutes before your kids are getting into the car. So that I was kind of spot on about because I'm noticing that the time that I used to be able to spend in deep ritual or spiritual practice, it's just different now. It's so different. So those precious little moments you can stretch them open and they can become big moments where in those 3 minutes, you just change your state really beautifully. So
sorry, go ahead.
That I feel like I nailed. The experience of my heart blossoming open into like a million kaleidoscopic shards, that I'd be like,
Mm. Amazing.
yeah,
Yeah, I feel like mom guilt is one of the most pervasive things that I see that just weighs so heavily.
yeah,
So
yeah.
telling them to be super easy on themselves feels really amazing. I had only the tiniest taste of it when I froze my eggs. Like every little thing or supplement I didn't take or like moment I was like late to an appointment, I was like, oh my God. I was like, if this is just one tiny little percentage of what
Right.
it can feel like of wanting to show up so much for this being that you love so much,
Yeah,
it feels like it could easily become overwhelming
yeah,
wanting
yeah.
to do so right for the one
Mm-hmm.
that you love so much.
Yeah,
So let's do a little speed round before we
yeah.
finish. I had my audience on Instagram write some questions for you. Actually, do you have the snake phone? Bring in the snake phone.
Do you have a work and play phone?
I have an Instagram and a non-Instagram. I have a social
That's
media
really
phone and a non-social media
That's really
phone.
smart. We
Yeah.
were talking about this recently, and I'm like, babe, I think we need to do something like that, like
Yeah.
separation of church and state in the home.
Totally. Well, because I need my phone for all manner of practical things, but if I can just hop on social media, it's not helpful. And then I
No.
can be very intentional about
Yeah.
social media, which is like, give me the snake phone. Now I want to be on Instagram. Okay. So I think Lausa says, how can you spot a good partner? And so then we'll do a speed round. So
Okay.
like,
Try to keep them
yeah.
short.
So Lausa says, how can you spot a good partner in the first interactions?
So the first thing you do is you close your mouth, you stop talking, you breathe, and you feel. So you don't spot them with your eyes, but you feel them with your pussy, with your heart, and your whole body.
Gorgeous. DND says, why is ghosting a thing?
Honey, we live in a culture that has a lot of healing still to do. So if somebody's ghosting you, it is not about you. It is about their own healing curriculum that they still need to step into.
Julia says, what do you think about polarity practices?
Nowadays, there's a lot of polarity on Instagram, polarity coaches, teachers just like popping up out of the woodwork everywhere. What I would say is if you want to learn about it, to really question your sources. Like, who are you learning from? Where are they learning? Ask yourself those deeper questions, and also just know that there's a lot of nuance. That polarity practice is something that you can bring into relationship just like a tool in your toolkit, but that it's not necessarily something that's going to be a 24/7 way of life. Yeah.
Beautiful. Ada says, how would you describe a truly sacred union and how to create one?
Mm. So a truly sacred union, well, it can mean a lot to many different people, but two people coming together with a shared value system around what is sacred to them and a shared intention for the purpose of the relationship. So that is really important to get on the same page. How you find one is you live out your sacred values and ideals, and you live them out really clearly, boldly, beautifully. You embody them. You don't just talk about them or just kind of poke at them and be curious about them, but you really embody them. And then you will call in someone who also embodies that reciprocal shared value system.
Amazing. And the last question from Little Fox Ray is, my partner experienced and I, no experience, are discussing playing with others together. Do you have any tips?
I am not an expert or a current practitioner of open relationship or polyamory, but I would say the tips would be to have really good, clear communication and just make sure that the container and the agreements are crystal clear before going in, and that your desires are really clear on the table, your hard edges, your yeses and nos, that everything is organized, and that you have a lot of time after each time you play with other people to really reconnect and to share how it felt for you.
Yeah, and I would also say, I think for the inexperienced person to really honor like what your edge is. because you can always like dip a toe in instead of like throwing yourself into the ocean. So if you want to just try making out with someone first and then integrate that and see what comes up and see what those feelings are, like it's way easier to test the waters that way than like if your partner is balls deep in someone else and you're like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. So I always recommend that people start very, very slow. Well, thank you so much for joining us here. I know people heard early on where they can follow you and learn from you, but if you want to share a little bit more now.
You can follow me at Alexandra Roxo. My name, I have 2 books, Fuck Like a Goddess and Dare to Feel, The Transformational Path of the Heart. And I work with women one-on-one and in groups. And with my partner, we lead some immersions and couples work together too.
Gorgeous. Thank you so much. So lovely to finally have you on. We've been trying to work it out for a while. So yes, thank you for
so
being
much.
here. Yay. Thank you for listening to this Tantric Life. I am Layla Martin. This is the home for the realest conversations about sex, spirituality, polarity, conscious relationships, and all kinds of topics that help us live the absolute most incredible lives. Please check out the next episode. Please go ahead and leave your rating and review on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. It's so, so, so helpful when you do that. If you want to stay connected to me, the most helpful supportive thing you can do is to head over to laylamartin.com, sign up with your email address. That connects you to me if you want to study deeper with me, if you want to receive my deeper teachings. I do it predominantly via email. Finally, you can check me out on Instagram at @the Layla Martin. And thank you so, so, so much for being here.